Welcome back to another Web Dev Podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing App Academy. Should you go there in 2023? And so, like usual, I brought on 3 real graduates to talk about their real experiences. I don't care to sell coding boot camps, and I don't care to sit there and trash coding boot camps. I specifically choose people that are willing to talk about the pros and the cons, and we literally just dig into the experiences, and hopefully some of the students here, you can relate to their experiences, so we'll go over other kind of like their background, stuff like that. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, all right, I got to remember my questions. I barely do these kind of episodes anymore. So we'll start with you, Max. When did you graduate? And we'll start with that. When did you graduate?
So I graduated in February earlier this year.
Gotcha. How's the job hunt going?
So I just finished a final round interview today. Hoping that goes through. But yeah, I mean, it's the same as the job hunt has been for everyone. All of the adjectives that Thomas Hobbes used to describe the state effectively.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I hope you do get the interview. Good luck with that. And then what's your background? Where did you come from before you decided to switch to coding?
So I was a graduate student before in philosophy. I guess I gave that one away. And then I worked at a auto parts e-commerce company doing SEO.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, same questions to you, Jason. When did you graduate?
I graduated in April, and my background previously, I was a clinical psych PhD student, and were those both of your questions?
Yeah, those are 2. And then, am I seriously going to forget my last question? My third question was, how's the job hunt going? Do you have a job right now, or are you still looking?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to currently have an internship in local government here, but it was quite a hard search, and I'm happy to get into that as well.
What type of position was it?
It's a full stack engineering internship.
Gotcha. What's the stack?
It's the one that I brought in, so Python on the back end and React on the front end.
Okay, cool. Well, congrats. That's awesome. Yeah, Patrick, how about you? When did you graduate? What is your background? And how's the job search going?
I graduated in April as well. Background, I did mostly manual labor jobs until recently. Medical issues, I had to switch careers, so fell back onto the coding, went into boot camp. The job search has been pretty rough, but I started working with a nonprofit organization, rebuilding their website as volunteer, and they currently have me gave them a proposal to build an application for them that they're going to pay me for, so that's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. A lot of people won't take that initiative. Good for you.
Thank you.
All right, so you know what you know now about App Academy, but when you were choosing App Academy, your coding boot camp, you hadn't gone through the program yet. You decided on App Academy for a reason. What was that reason over all other coding boot camps?
For me, honestly, it was the reputation online. It claimed to be number one, and a lot of the reviews that I found that were positive, they all made sense. The negative ones didn't really have a whole lot of. It didn't seem that serious. It was more of like a personal opinion, and so it just seemed like the best way to go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Max?
So I think mainly for me, it was their job search program. Because I came in with a little bit of coding experience already. I kind of felt that it was important to have the job search program to really help me make the transition, especially because of their partnership program.
And what is their partnership program?
So their partnership program is they have a bunch of companies that they're partnered with. And effectively what they do is they will refer you to those companies and help you hopefully land a job.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. But you, Jason?
For me, it started, I just tried to narrow it down to some top choices. And that I did just through like reading reviews online and watching podcasts like this to sort of identify. I came to like the top three. For me, it was like App Academy, Hack Reactor, and Codesmith at the time. And then it came down to specifically like the time commitment. I was looking for a longer program. I had heard, that these were going to be like a fire hose of information. And I wanted to go somewhere where I would actually retain what I was going to learn. So hopefully I could find one that, was as long as possible, but not, overbearing. So App Academy's 6-month full-time program seemed like a good fit for that. And they also, they had all the accolades of like a top boot camp from what I could identify.
Okay. And everyone went through a full-time program?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then Max, you were hybrid in person, and Jason and Patrick was online in the San Francisco one, right?
Right.
Okay. Cool. Just for some extra context. Cool. Well, let's dive into it. I guess we'll kind of like touch on the surface level and then I'll dig into it a bit. What do you think about the program?
It was rough. many hours. It definitely was challenging. It was very difficult, but it felt rewarding at the end of each mod when you finally, get through it and they switch over to some new material. It was exciting. You felt like you had accomplished something for each step.
Okay. What about you guys?
Jason, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, it was very rewarding. I agree with Patrick. I think it was a good program, very challenging, but at the end of the day, I came out of the program knowing how to build full stack web applications. And I felt like I had resources behind me to go out and find a job. And I don't think that that's so easy to come across. So I feel like it was a good program.
Okay.
So straight up, I thought the instructional staff were amazing. They're super dedicated to student outcomes. I was really lucky to have a really smart and supportive cohort, which really helps you, get through the process. I think like everyone else said, I found it really rigorous, but I kind of felt like the reason for the rigor was there's a lot of infrastructure overhead, and sometimes there's a little bit of rough patches in the curriculum that I think could be smoothed out. And sometimes that kind of felt like it was a little bit distracting from, the student experience.
I want to hear more about that. Let's dive into the curriculum. What do you think about it more specifically, Max?
So I think that the curriculum is starting to show its age a little bit. And there were just a couple places where we thought, or at least my cohort felt that there was no way that we could have came to some of the same conclusions based on the curriculum. A lot of the times we're calling one of the instructors over for clarification on the curriculum. And like I said, that's an instance of where I felt the curriculum made everyone bend over backwards a little bit, because the instructor has to go around running to every pair and say, well, this is what they're really looking for here, when, I guess you could edit the text and that might, kind of clarify things up a little bit and reduce the workload for everyone.
Gotcha. So that's interesting. Did you find that to be a thing throughout the curriculum?
In some places worse than others. So I think that in my cohort, we use Rails primarily for the back end. And there was like one instance that really stuck out where we were shown a video that was shot with Rails 4. And then we were told to pretend some things that were in place from Rails 5. And we're using Rails 7.
Okay.
So there's a lot of imagination work that we had to do. And a lot of times we didn't even know what pieces to presuppose were in that place. So it was just kind of like, again, it's a lot of overhead work to do, especially when you don't come in with a lot of knowledge about the backend framework.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I'll let you guys share your opinions about it before I say anything.
Well, I mean, like you were saying, it really does cause some bumps along the roads. I mean, they even tell you going in that everything that's going to be on your exams, they don't teach. They don't give you all the information. They don't tell you everything that you're going to need to know. They give you the basics and then expect you to go home, do the research and figure things out and learn new things that they haven't even shown you by the time you get onto the test. So you're going in on Mondays and, you know, there may be 2 or 3 questions that they didn't even cover. So that was definitely a little difficult as far as, you know, that goes, but there were some spelling errors and other different mistakes. And yeah, it definitely needs some revision, I think.
I actually had the opposite experience with testing where they were really upfront with what's going to be on the test. And they were really helpful with trying to, and again, like different cohorts. So, you know, take that in consideration. But they were really helpful with trying to get us prepared for the test and, you know, helping us understand what's going to be on the test and being super transparent with that.
The practice exams were fantastic. They really did help a lot. Like they would show you what was going to be on, but there were always, for me, 1 or 2 questions asking you to do things that they hadn't really shown us yet, or that we didn't know the syntax yet, that they expected us to figure out on our own. At least I ran into that quite a bit.
Patrick, did you have supplemental links where they're like, okay, review it, but review this, where they did give you a source?
A lot of that would be, they tell you to study MDN docs, you know, look at the documentation, try and figure things out. Like, there was a couple of times where they would teach us the hard way to do something. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, we find out, wait a minute, there's a command for that. We like it's just, it would be so simple to do, but you know, they definitely try to teach you the other ways to doing it first. But, so yeah, there was a lot of syntax that was kind of sprung on us later on, or a couple times it was on the test that, you know, I don't feel like they went over in class, but that's my experience anyways.
Let me give you a perspective, and I want you to give your honest response of if you feel like they were doing this. So, for example, when I went through my boot camp, before we dove into React, basically we were learning jQuery. We just got exposure. We basically, even back then, this is 7 years ago or so, they're like, you're probably not going to use jQuery, but you might still catch it in a company that you do get hired for. So we learned it, and then we actually built a miniature version of Vue and State. Basically what you're doing in React before we even got into React, right? So I would argue that's the hard way to kind of build up your own UI, right? React makes it much easier. But when we did that, I felt like React became much easier because I tried to learn React on my own, but going through that practice helped me understand what was actually happening, which helped me more thoroughly understand how React works. So I didn't just, you know, I could do more than just create a component that re-rendered a bunch of lists, right? I knew what was happening. And I followed that practice several times, learning MVC. I could not pick up Laravel. Hated Laravel, couldn't understand it, and then I built my own mini MVC framework, and it helped me understand Laravel even more. So do you feel like that was their strategy, or do you feel like they were just, their curriculum just needed updates?
Oh, no, it was definitely strategy. They, when we got to that point, we would point it out, and they were like, yeah, we couldn't show you because we wanted you to, you know, to know how to do it, you know, the hard way. We wanted you to struggle with it, to know what's actually going on, to how it works and how these things are like. What comes to mind a lot is the sorting methods with you know, different array sorting methods that you can use in JavaScript. And they taught us how to do all of those without any of the, the methods and the classes that we could use to just type in one line and have it do the work ourselves. We had to actually build out the different sorting algorithms. And yeah, it was definitely to try to help our understanding for sure. Okay, so do you think that was a positive or negative thing? I think that was a positive. And honestly, I don't really see the things that the syntax and stuff that was on the test that they didn't really cover. I don't really see that as a negative. I mean, they have to prepare you to go out and find your own information. I mean, just a large part of our job as a software engineer is going to be kind of having an idea of what we need to do and then going and finding the information and finding out what we have to. I mean, I think it was more a way to prepare us for, hey, this is the mindset you need to get into. Okay. So App Academy, from just listening to different students, seems to have a little bit of a reputation of being very rigid in the way it tests, the way it allows people to progress. And that seems like that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. And even that check-in system, I don't know if they still do that, right? So I'm wondering, we kind of have like two situations here where like their strategy is actually a very effective strategy and that's their goal, or do they basically just expect you to use that array sort method when you've never learned the syntax, or can you build your own custom sort method and still pass that exam? You can build your own and still pass it. Oh. Yeah. They give you what you need to pass, but they don't necessarily, I'm trying to remember an exact example. Just remember on some of the tests, there were forms. They don't go over all the different kinds of the elements in the forms, like how to do the, I can't, it's escaping me right now, but the different elements, they don't tell you all of them. They don't show you all of them. But then when you get to the test, there's one or two you haven't seen before that you need to be able to code out. And I mean, it is an open book test. You can get on and use MD and Docs and find it. So It's not that they're hiding it from you. It's just, you have to be able to go and do it without them telling you to go and do it to prepare for the test. And it wasn't an all the time thing. It's just something we ran into a couple of times. Okay. All right. Thanks for
that. I definitely agree that overall App Academy was very rigid about your ability to progress through the course and the curriculum. If we're just talking about like the tests, we would have a test every Monday. In the online program, I think it's 24 weeks. 17 of those weeks, we have a test on Monday. And I can tell you that of those 17 tests, in my personal experience, I felt like we had learned all the content that we would need for those tests for 16 out of the 17 tests. There was one test that I think a lot of people would attest to. You really had to stretch and go above and beyond what you had been taught. But everything else, I think they gave us the material that we would need. It was just sometimes there was just a lot to cover. That was just my personal experience.
I would agree with that, honestly. Okay. Interesting. So with the Max, you felt like the curriculum. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys just had a little bit of different experiences. And as
I feel like sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but I do feel like it does sound like that online's very, very different from in person or hybrid in my case. Hybrid was basically in person, except for there were a couple of days where you were at home and then you would commute in. So let me kind of just like, I don't mean to like backtrack to your question, but do you mind if I just like kind of address, the check-in system and then also the testing structure?
Sure.
So it is true that they still have the check-in system. That's just, again, one of the overhead things that you need to deal with as a student at App Academy. As for the testing, in our case, what happened is our tests were all closed book. So you had to come in knowing what was going on. And for the most part, they were all passable. So what they do is they say, hey, you need to pass a certain number of test cases. If you do that, you're good. If not, then, they revert back to their testing policy. What I think everything was pretty much fair game. Honestly, I was sometimes a little bit too lazy to, go for all the specs because like I just personally didn't care. But a lot of, the people in my cohort, they were able to get full specs every time.
Okay. So your curriculum, Max, or your cohort was earlier than theirs. I wonder if they started creating an open book or the hybrid in person is just different than online.
From what I hear, a lot. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go on? Yeah. So from what I hear, there just are like curriculum differences between hybrid and online. I think the cohort that came after me, they seem to have the same testing structure. One thing I did hear is that, we have a test on user auth that they don't have online. And that's usually the test that most people get scared for because it's mainly a memorization test. And yeah, I don't think I could say anything more about that, but most of us come in, under the presupposition that we're not going to have to do just, brute force memorization for a lot of this. So that was the one that I think most people felt scared for. But yeah, I don't know. Like they might have changed things. As far as I've heard recently, I don't think that's the case.
The only test that I remember that they said that we didn't have to do that they did in person was, I think, the Redux test. Is that the one you're speaking of?
We didn't even have a Redux test. That was tucked under React. So what we did is we were taught React and then Redux, I think over like a period of 2 weeks. And then effectively you have a test on both.
Well, I think also like the elephant in the room is the curriculums are different. From what I understand, the in-person, the backend framework that you guys learn is Ruby and Ruby on Rails, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. We're learning Python and Python Flask. So we had totally different backend instruction, from what I understand.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Why?
I can speculate. I don't know. I'm not the directors there, but I believe that it was an update because I think it all used to be in Ruby, but I think Python is sort of the modernized curriculum. I'd be curious if you had thoughts on that, Max.
So from what I understand and what was explained to me is that it's partially geographical, where a lot of the companies that are using Ruby are on the coast, or they have locations on the coast. So if you think about like the last round of IPOs, right, where we had Airbnb and Coinbase IPO in like 2021, both of those are companies that use Ruby on Rails. So, I think that there was a point in time where Ruby on Rails was super popular. And then it's declined in popularity. And then specifically this year, it's gotten a little bit of a boost.
That makes sense. I like the location. I think that makes a difference. Wait, sorry. I would be curious about the demographics of people signing up online. Remind me again, Max, you were hybrid in San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the best way of thinking of that is we were in person. Like that's the original structures of the in-person bootcamp, except for that we're, working from home 2-3 days a week.
So they must not have, maybe they don't have a lot of people taking the online that are in San Francisco to still teach whatever's going to be marketable in San Francisco or the coast.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't, again, like I'm just giving you the reasons that the, marketing agent like told me. one other thing that I noticed is that, there's only a certain amount of staff members who are maybe trained to teach, Ruby at the level that's needed for the cohort. And it might be an issue of saying like, hey, we can't find the staff or rather you would have to retrain the staff in order to teach like Django or Flask, right? So that might be something that is, a consideration. At the end of the day, I'm I'm honestly not sure why they teach Ruby in person and then they teach like Python online.
Yeah, I will say from my experience, I'm in, East Coast, and I would say I could probably count the amount of people that I ran into on the East Coast on my two hands. Like about a good 70 to 80% of them seem to be in California, Washington, Oregon, right on the West Coast. So I'm not sure, but just been my experience.
Okay. It seemed like recently, didn't they have some staffing issues?
Oh, yes.
What happened with that?
They eliminated a position, the cohort leads. The cohort leader was someone that, you meet them on day one. They're with you throughout the entire process. They give lectures. That's the one stable element throughout the entire course. And they decided to eliminate that position without telling anyone. And then the owner actually hosted a meeting and talked to people and let them give their input and to tell basically what his plan was for that. But it caused quite a stir. A lot of people were pretty upset about that.
Yeah, I was there when that happened. At that point, I think I was in like week 21 or something, or 24, and we were mostly working independently. So I feel like even though it was very unfortunate, I wasn't too personally affected just because we were all working hard on our capstones at that point. But in that call, which I believe is floating around online somewhere, you can see, the entirety of the bootcamp members, people were very upset. It was kind of an odd call too, because it felt like what you would get if you're working at a company and the CEO calls an all hands, but we're the clients basically. So I'm not sure if it was super appropriate, to be honest. But it did happen and it was very dramatic. And yeah, so I wasn't super personally affected by it, but they did eliminate that position.
That's an interesting statement. Not appropriate. Why?
Well, they at the end of making that announcement, there was already some stirs going around because people heard or they were trying to message their cohort leads on Slack, and they were not getting responses, and people were starting to speculate. So we got this announcement. People are going to react negatively, and they did. And then he opened it up to a Q&A, and I'm not sure if that was like supposed to be a mitigation or something to try to show that they're open to hearing our feedback. But it was kind of a slaughter. There were some very sharp people in that room who had very pointed questions for the CEO. And, they were definitely like dodging, and it didn't look great. So, it might've been a good outlet for the students. I'm just not sure it was the best move on App Academy's part when they pulled that.
I remember I did see a good portion of that video. Yeah, like you almost have to expect something to get leaked like that at this point. I don't think that was a good move on their part at all. I don't know what happened on the back end, and it sounds like people feel like he wasn't transparent enough so they could know exactly what happened in the back end. I think my one concern is, did they mitigate this at all? Did they how did they help alleviate this? Because in my eyes, if they're going to take out a major role like that, they should reduce your cost, a partial refund. That's my personal opinion, but I haven't gone through the program. I don't know how it actually affected students. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, the one thing that he said they eliminated that position, and then so that they could reallocate that money into better material and resources on job training and getting us prepared for the job market. personally, I didn't see a bit of that. But I was towards the end of the, curriculum when that happened. But people were asking on the video, okay, if you eliminated this and it helped us so much, like having that person, they wanted to see itemized, like a list of what exactly we're getting from this. Like, where's our money going? Where, what have you done? If you've taken this resource away, what are you giving us in return? And he couldn't really answer that to anyone's satisfaction. But yeah, like I said, I really didn't see much benefit from it. It just, and there was a girl going through, I'd known her since day one, just same as cohort lead. She got promoted to cohort lead. And then a month later, they eliminated the position and she was kind of left out in the cold. And so it upset me a little bit, but yeah, I just think it wasn't smart on their part. And I agree, it definitely wasn't smart the way they handled it with the video. It was informal and it just led to a slaughter, and it made him look foolish, honestly.
Yeah. And in terms of like cost mitigation, so during the call, people were going online and they saw that the price now for admission had gone from previously, if you're paying up front, it was $20K, but it was slashed to $14K if you're paying up front. And then if you do the pay later version, both of those were a little higher than that, but it had been reduced all around. However, the people who were currently attending had signed a contract, and they made sure to address that on the call. They said, whatever contract you signed, basically you're locked in. So there's a group of people who paid potentially $20K up front or are locked in to pay $30K later, who are going to have to go through the rest of their time at App Academy without that service that they originally had been sold on. So that was the part that I think was, I don't know if people got to renegotiate their contracts or what happened, but there was definitely a group of people who got screwed by that. Even though maybe some newcomers are paying lower rates.
Well, you both went through that experience and they never initialized a conversation with you about refunding anything?
No.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I get why people are so angry about it. I do. I'll be honest, and I'll ask a couple more questions and we'll dive further into it. But I kind of always saw App Academy as, and like Jason, you've seen my last review. It's a bit of an elitist elitist type program. We talked about some of the mental health cons of going through this program in my last review, and I feel like it just felt a bit more extreme. That doesn't necessarily translate into making you a better software engineer, but it definitely felt different than other coding boot camps, right? It felt like, without really diving deep into the curriculum, they were producing fairly good software engineers. But it also, when I saw what happened with these leads being tossed out, people really felt like the leads were the primary thing, really driving them through the program and building up their skills and their confidence as a software engineer. Would you say they are, or they were, a major part of you growing at App Academy?
Well, I felt a real connection to the cohort leads. I mean, you develop a relationship with when you're going through something so difficult with somebody, and they're there and they're supporting you and they're helping you. You get close, and I'm still actually have the phone number of the first cohort lead that I was going through with, and they're a huge help. They're very beneficial, and yeah, it was rough. I'm sorry, I think I've trailed off from the question.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I would agree that they were the human side to being in this big machine that's really scary and anxiety provoking. As you progress, you move and your instructors change and the TAs change, but the cohort lead stayed with you the whole time. So it was a really nice person to have. They also sort of were a lubricant between you and the actual staff. If you had an issue with something grading wise or attendance wise, they were the person that you would talk to. They were the front end. And pulling that position away definitely changes the experience, because now you no longer have someone who tracks with you that entire way, and you can develop a closer relationship too. So it's just a different experience without them.
Okay. I would even argue, you typically might not have that at many other coding boot camps. So I actually look at that as like a bonus, but it seems like it was a big bonus that built up App Academy's reputation. Okay. And
you might
Max,
just mention some. Oh, sorry. Why don't you ask your question first?
I was going to ask, so you graduated before all this happened, right?
Yes. And one thing I want to add is that we technically did not have a cohort lead. I think one thing that really helped us is there was this, like a buddy of mine, Nishan. He had done web development before. And so he came in and he kind of, hoisted everyone over his shoulders and like carried us all across the river. So he was kind of like our cohort lead, but he wasn't exactly paid by App Academy. So that's a little bit of a different, he's a student. Okay. He's another student who came in with the experience, if you're curious. So that was kind of our experience. So I have empathy for that. Look, if you don't mind, and just for I'm going to play devil's advocate for a sec. I don't necessarily support what happened to the cohort leads. In fact, I should just say straight up, I don't. I do think that the way that things were delivered weren't really well done. I just want to note, though, that everyone has had to make cuts during this job market. One thing that happened is they closed both of the San Francisco locations. And what my understanding is that one of them wasn't even originally a campus location. It was actually an office space that had been converted to a campus location. So both of those are closed. The hybrid cohort doesn't exist anymore. It's all online in San Francisco. And what the case has been is that basically every company has had to make cuts. What I will say, though, is that, I think Brian Chesky at Airbnb said, you have to make cuts swift and you have to cut deep, or, you're going to have issues. And so, I hate to say it, but something was going to happen. And unfortunately, this was the result of, maybe being a little bit over leveraged in one aspect of their books. I don't know. Again, I don't have access to their balance sheet. I don't know exactly where resources are getting allocated. What I will say, though, is that this has been the trend all over Silicon Valley. And I don't think that App Academy being the second or third derivative of, the entire financial pipeline, I don't think that they're going to be really excluded from that trend.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say,
I'll wait for my opinion.
Okay. In support of App Academy, knowing what I know now, knowing there's no cohort lead there, if you were to enroll, I would still think it would be worth it. I think everything else that they have going on makes the program worth it for me personally. There just might not be as much of a safety net in these small interactions that you might have had with a cohort lead, but I do think it's still worth it even without one.
Yeah, can I just clarify one position that I personally have? I'm not playing devil's advocate now. Okay, the only reason why, I wouldn't say the only reason, but one of the reasons that helped is because we had a very talented student help all of us out. And, that does convert into landing jobs. In this economy, someone's not going to hire you just because you went to App Academy. If anything, everyone's getting a bump to step down. I have friends who have a bachelor's or a master's, and they're having a hard time finding a job right now. And usually, just what everyone says is unequivocally, bootcamp grads are lower on the hierarchy. So that's just one thing, or one caveat I would give to the opinion that I gave earlier.
Okay. Let me expand on that. So I appreciate the devil's advocate. Because I think there's two sides to this. In fact, I've gotten many people pissed off at me because I didn't trash companies that were doing layoffs. And like I'm empathetic towards both sides. And I like to understand the business side of things. I like to understand the client side of things. I truly do. For me, when I see people getting overly emotional, I think it's extremely non-impactful. And I even see the call as something that kind of went into something that was not impactful at all for the students. Yeah, you got a dunk on the CEO, but like you just clearly showed that you're completely ignorant about the economy and how App Academy is even run. Now, the problem I have is you're going to be ignorant when the CEO isn't transparent when a major change like that happens. I have encouraged students, talk to an attorney. Maybe you have a lawsuit on your hands if you're paying that much money and they took a major portion, like an impactful portion out of what you agreed to pay for, right? If like anything was advertised about those leads or anything like that, like my recommendation is still talk to an attorney. Unfortunately, a lot of students switching careers don't have a lot of money. That is the unfortunate part about it. But honestly, like I'm strictly speaking strategy wise, I think that was a really bad strategy to do that call. I would have expected that call to be leaked. And I think that was a wake up call to many other coding bootcamps. I guarantee you staff from coding bootcamps are like, we're not doing this. There's no way in hell we're getting this leaked, right? But you're right. Like a lot of companies had to take a big hit, including educational programs. I made the claim that a lot of coding bootcamps have really tapped the profit. Now, my argument is, and again, it sounds like there isn't enough transparency, did App Academy overreach as people were like doing this massive transition into tech? Everyone should code, right? Did App Academy accept more students than they should have? And did they overreach? And then all of a sudden the revenue from the signups dropped off, right? That was also a problem with companies, right? So you could say like, yeah, it was a pattern across the industry where a lot of companies were laying off people. You know, App Academy probably experienced that as well, right? But a lot of the reason was companies got greedy with the profit. And I know a lot of coding bootcamps. I haven't specifically looked at the enrollment numbers with App Academy, but a lot of coding bootcamps, like the cohorts, like 12 students to one instructor was a great ratio. And then it bumped up to 16 and 20. And I had episodes of 30, 40, 50, 100, 250 students to one instructor, and they tried to supplement with a bunch of TAs. Like so that's my concern with it. And should people, and we don't have to you don't have to answer this question if you don't want, but I'm just saying my opinion. Should people trust App Academy to prioritize their student success over profit? What was the reason they got into that situation in the first place? Do you feel like students should go in with open arms with App Academy and say, you know what, like this is just the economy, this happens, like I trust they have my best interests at heart and my career is their focus, or are they just trying to make money?
Well, I will say a lot of students took advantage of the income shared agreement that they have. And that's basically, you don't pay them a dime until you have a job making at least 50 grand. And it's my understanding that if something happens and you get a job and you lose it for whatever reason, your payments stop until you get another job. So they're very dependent on your success, especially if you take the income shared agreement. So it would seem like it would be in their highest priority to make sure that they get us a job. And I think that's what the CEO was trying to say with reallocating funds towards getting better job training materials and helping in that direction. I think they're very invested in your success.
What's the minimum that you have to make though?
50 grand a year.
In San Francisco?
Anywhere.
Doesn't matter where.
50 is decent in Northwest Indiana, where I grew up, if you're single. Like, they have a lot of students coming from San Francisco. 50,000 feels like a middle finger to students signing up in San Francisco.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a very high bar. At the same time, I don't know how many jobs you're going to find in tech that are paying 50 base around here. It's possible. So there are some like stipulations in that contract where they don't have to place you in a programming job. It can be tech or tech adjacent. So you don't even have to be coding. So that is a glaring loophole, I guess, but I'm sure they need that.
Do you have to accept the job they place you in?
I'm not sure about the back and forth I would imagine that if you're in communication with your career coach and you're playing, when you get into the career searching part, they're going to be very aware of what you're doing. And so if you have job offers that match the criteria, you're not accepting it, you might violate App Academy's terms, and then they can make you pay, the full amount that you've agreed to right then and there, even if you have the income share agreement. So they're protecting themselves. So while those are in place, I do still feel like finishing the program, like App Academy, was aligned with my goals of getting a job. There is so much in place, and maybe we can get into sort of their career services department.
Yeah.
But there's a lot in place to help you succeed.
Okay. What do you think about that, Max?
So I'm going to respond to Jason, and then Don, I'll respond to one of the things you brought up earlier. So I think that they are aware, though, that if you're broke, you can't pay them, right? And that's something that they made pretty clear during one of the all hands meetings, where they're not going to try and, strike you out and then make you pay the entire fee up front, because it's like, well, you spent your money to go to coding bootcamp, you couldn't get a job. There's not much that they're going to be able to squeeze out of you in that case, right? Furthermore, I think, like, at least to what Don was saying in terms of like the 50K, I think for the most part, they're expecting the free market to take care of that problem, where, most entry-level software engineers are making over 100K in San Francisco, or at least, like, there were a lot of companies that had that salary. In terms of the point of, hey, did App Academy buy too many, out of the money call options? Let me put it this way, that I don't think everyone just thought, the line only goes up and to the right. And a lot of people in VC say, well, basically the way this industry works is it's a giant sawtooth. It goes up really gradually, and then all of a sudden it falls overnight. So, and I think this is a separate issue from saying, well, do we hold them responsible? But the whole idea is like, well, okay, we're not able to, the most sophisticated investors aren't able to get it right. The most sophisticated financial institutions aren't able to get it right. And, I'm thinking primarily like Silicon Valley Bank, all the other two, like, crypto banks that fell. And then also, like, a lot of the most sophisticated companies, they're just playing follow the leader. They're all waiting for, like, Sundar and Mark to say, hey, everyone, we're hiring again. And then I've heard this from one of my friends who works at Unity. Effectively, that's what everyone's waiting for. And again, App Academy is like the second or third derivative of that. So, would they have been able to predict it right? Based on what I'm saying, probably not. Now, you do have an issue, though, where, you've taken people's money. In some cases, your financial interests are aligned with those people, and you have to sort that out. So, that's just where I stand on the issue.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing. I feel like this is a conversation that could probably extend another half an hour. I think it's a good conversation. I like conversations like this, but I do want to ask a couple other questions. So what I'm going to invite you to do, wherever you see this video, there's a comment section, especially YouTube. Comment below. I definitely want to hear your opinions on it. I highly encourage you to try to have empathy on both sides. I know that I say that all the time, and people just pick a side anyway. So I get it. You don't listen to me, but I want to hear your opinions about it, right? I truly do, and I'd definitely be open to doing like a podcast episode or live stream to like dive into what the hell has been happening in tech and some of the perceptions of what's happened and what I've seen in my own perception. But like I said, let's dive a little bit deeper into App Academy. Two things I want to dive into are instructors, and we'll talk about the career services. So let's dive into instructors. What do you guys think about your instructors?
I mean, I thought they were fantastic. They really do go above and beyond for people. I mean, if you have any kind of problem, if you're behind, if you didn't do the homework, if you just talk to them, they are right there to help. They're very adamant about that. There were a lot of times where I didn't ask for help when I really should have, and it helped me back a lot. And they even tell you, if you don't ask for help, you're not going to pass. And it gets really intense in points where that's very, very true. Struggling is good, but not good to do for any, longer than 15, 20, 30 minutes. You need to ask for help. And they are always happy to do so. The TAs have always been very nice, very helpful. They've saved me on more than one occasion when I had problems with Ubuntu or Python not installing correctly. I mean, they really will go above and beyond to help. They were fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, there were some particularly great instructors with the online program, specifically with React. Shout out to Dan. There's some of the instructors there will go deeper than even the material would go, because you can tell that they're passionate. That was my experience with some of the later modules and beginning modules as well. Every once in a while you'll have someone who is just there to sort of guide you through the slides that you already have. But for the most part, I found the instructors to be quite knowledgeable, and the TAs were always available when we would do independent work. Often the reason that you're going to bootcamp is you want structure and you want help. They were available to help you debug your problems, usually within 5 minutes. So yeah, I have really great things to say about the instructors and TAs there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of my most fondest memories is I had a problem with my full stack project, and something wasn't rendering correctly on React. So I called one of the instructors over, not a TA, excuse me, and he sat with me for like 20, 30 minutes trying to figure it out. And I said, well, forget it. It's an issue with the back end. I'll just do a full refactor. And he really tried to make it so that I was taking the path of least resistance. And he really tried to, help me get through that pain point. So I don't know, that for me is just something that illustrates how much work the instructors really do. And I really appreciate that.
Sounds like a glowing review of the instructors. Okay. I do think instructors make or break a coding bootcamp. That experience is crucial, and I've heard many horror stories to prove why that's crucial. I've talked about this a lot on other review episodes. Hopefully they're putting a lot of time into finding the right instructors. I almost think that maybe our assumption that they teach a different stack because they don't have an instructor that's good enough for it was the right choice, and that's the choice they made. I don't think we really know why exactly, but yeah, I'm glad they put so much attention in finding good instructors. Cool. All right, let's dive into career services. So, yeah, I think you were alluding to something, Patrick. So you basically said their argument was they were investing or reinvesting all of their resources into this end of the spectrum for the coding bootcamp. Do you feel like that paid off?
I didn't see a bit of it. And quite honestly, the last 2 weeks of the curriculum were kind of a joke. The career prep was I remember taking classes in high school that covered more things on interviews and how to deal with that than what they taught. I guess if you've never been in the job market before, it's useful, but that's about the only situation. And then after graduation, my career coach he's been helpful, but yeah, honestly, I've not seen much. Everything that I've gotten, my career coach posted the link in Discord for the volunteer services, and that's where I got the idea from, and that's where I went and doing what I'm doing now. But apart from that, I've not seen any kind of benefit from any of that.
Okay. What about you guys?
Jason?
Yeah, I Actually, I agree with Patrick. The last 2 weeks of the curriculum, the entire time leading up to that, I was feeling like internally, I'm like, yes, this is great. I'm learning good applicable skills. I can directly see how this is going to help. And then we got to week 22 or 23, and it sort of was like a standardization event where everyone was supposed to create a resume for the first time, but most of us already had. There were just maybe a few people who hadn't, and there were very basic skills like how to write a cover letter, but I don't feel like the presentations were like exceptional. It was more to help get everyone to sort of the same level. And so there was this 2-week period where everyone's gathering their materials, and things really slowed down for me personally. Once the job search started, I think there really was a dichotomy in like where students would go. And I've been working very closely with my career coach. I feel like there are just so many resources that they will give you. And the thing is, not everyone takes advantage of them. And what I mean by that is they have dedicated types of people to help you with every part of the interviewing process to get a job. Like specifically, I had my first coding interview coming up for a role a few months ago. And I talked with my career coach about it. We strategized on a high level, and then she booked me with a session for a technical interview, like practice test. And that was super helpful. I got live feedback on how my technical interviewing skills were, and we were able to strategize, dynamically for the role that I was applying to. And then in that same week, I got booked with a behavioral coach to do behavioral interview questions. And then I also got booked with a project TA, basically, who went over my projects with me. And we even found like bugs that would have been bad to have in prod. But just the fact that I could have like 3 separate coaches all getting me ready for this one interview, like, it's incredible. I don't know how many boot camps offer that service. I also don't think a lot of people were taking advantage of that. But that's kind of like an unlimited thing. You can schedule as many of those as you want. You just have to like use those resources. But they are available, and they're really good.
That's a fantastic experience and a really good offer that not a lot of coding boot camps offer that.
I will say I had interviews and I spoke to my career coach about it. There was nothing offered to me.
Really?
Not a thing. Not a thing. He didn't even mention any of it. Like, it was just, I told him I had an interview. He was like, good luck. That was about it.
Did you ask to be booked with those people?
Honestly, I wasn't even aware of it. Like, I knew they talked about behavioral coaches and all that, but I guess I assumed that my career coach would have told me about it, and so I didn't ask. But yeah, I was just told, good luck, let me know how it goes. That was it.
Yeah, you probably assumed you didn't need the help, but it sounds like they could do a better job of making those options apparent.
Right. Honestly, I probably would have taken it if it was offered to me. But I kind of was under the understanding that they would reach out to us. But yeah, I never had that happen. So.
Okay. Well, this is advice for anyone watching this. Take advantage of that.
Definitely.
What do you think, Max?
Yeah. So my experience is that, so I actually withdrew from the formal job search requirements, but in other words, they say, you have to do a certain amount of applications, a certain amount of like commits, et cetera, if you're in the job search program. But if you paid up front, then they say you can waive those, commitments altogether.
To get the certificate.
Well, this is the job search portion, like the certificate. The certificate's already given to you.
Why are they giving you? Like, why are they essentially? That's weird. So you pay up front, and they're basically telling you don't have to do. You didn't have to do it anyways. Like, why? Where does that conversation come up?
I think it comes up like right when you're about to transition into job search.
But requirements for what? To achieve what?
Oh, so they have kind of just like an accountability system, kind of like how they had it like during the actual instruction period.
Okay, so you don't get any benefits for filling the requirements, but they tell you don't have to fill them?
No, you get all the benefits of like having the job search coaches, and you get all the resources, but you don't have to keep up with the accountability program.
Okay, but
So in other words, they can't issue you strikes because there's no strikes to be had, because you don't have to go through that accountability system.
okay.
I might not be explaining it right.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm just wondering. So the way you worded it was they told you that you don't have, like, you don't, if you paid up front, you don't have to go through the requirements. You don't have to meet these requirements. To me, when I hear that, I'm like, no kidding. Like I don't know, like, if unless there's a benefit that you achieve from hitting those requirements, like, why even say that?
I think the argument that I've heard from, again, like, I obviously opted out. I didn't need the structure, so to speak, but there were people in my cohort who they paid up front and they said, hey, the structure really helps me, like, stay motivated and keeps me on track. So I have other obligations outside the job search, and I wouldn't have been able to keep up with the job search requirements. So, that's why I personally decided to opt out. Well, I will say, kind of covering a different topic than what's been covered. All of my traction, almost exclusively, has come from the partnership program. So they did a partnership with, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the company's name. I'll just leave it out for now. But they did a partnership where they were able to find people a contracting opportunity. So if you're under the presupposition that, like I am, that, finding a job might be a little bit hard and you need to cut the financial edge a little bit, and also get some experience on your resume, that could be a valuable opportunity to you. I will say that, even though I opted out, I don't feel that my job coach treats me, I still can meet with my job coach.
Okay.
He doesn't treat me any different than, the other advisees. And I think that's really, that's meaningful to me.
Yeah, I think that was my main question afterwards. Because I was trying to solidify, like, it, to me, that just sounded really weird. But I was wondering.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So if you needed, like, a mock interview or something like that and you opted out, they would be willing to do that?
Mock interviews, what happens is you have to go and schedule them, or, mostly you just have to schedule them. So yeah, I've been able to get mock interviews with my coach, even though I'm not, under the job search accountability program.
Got it. Okay. I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover. We have up to, at max, like 5 minutes. I know I asked fairly targeted questions and I dig into very particular things that I think are interesting and I think are going to be useful to students. But here's your chance real quick. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you want to share that you think potential students should know?
Could I offer some tips to someone who's decided they want to go to this program? For, like, the online program specifically, the first 4 weeks are crazy. It is so much information. The way that I succeeded and was not panicking, unlike the rest of my 150 classmates, was that I did the first 4 weeks of the curriculum online before the program started, and that made all the difference. The program narrows very, very dramatically in the first, like, 4 to 8 weeks, meaning people will get cut. Your cohort starts at, like, maybe 150, and by week 6 or 7, you're down to about 80. And that includes people who are repeating the module and who have started before you. So start early, start on the coursework early if you're going to do it. And then my other piece of advice would be, in general, start early on the job search. I started searching before they greenlit me or told me it was okay. And that was very helpful to me because I got, the bad interviews out of the way. I got practice. I started to realize, the networking opportunities that I needed and where I needed to go. And then my last piece of advice, just to pack it all in, would be in my job search, the way that I landed my internship was to be very creative, go to career fairs and listen to everybody, talk to everyone. This job that I had is in government, and I got it because I listened to a job that they were hiring for someone to do manually. And I had an idea about how they could automate it. And they really liked that. And I think that you can repeat that in other ways or offer to make people websites. So just be creative and start everything early is my advice.
It's really good advice. Thanks for sharing. Anything else? Or you guys good?
Yeah, kind of like what Jason was saying. I think that more specifically, I would spend a lot of time on SQL and HTML, CSS, because that's something which does convert into, benefits later on. I think one thing that was discussed during the full stack project is we felt like half of our time was trying to do HTML, CSS. And the people who had a background in either web design or did front end before, they found that portion a little bit easier. I would also say try and start networking before you even go to boot camp, especially in this job market, because that is probably going to be more or less your ticket to a job after you graduate.
Okay. Cool. Anything from you, Patrick?
Yeah. I think it's a good idea to try as you're going through the course to think about what area you want to specialize in. We go as full stack developers, but chances are they're not going to put us in to work on a complete full stack project by ourselves. You're going to be either front end focused or back end focused. And typically, even if you're back end focused, you're going to be doing the grunt work for a while. But try to figure out what you like doing while you're going through. When you get to the CSS mod, see if you like the front end. When you get to React, see if you prefer doing the back end or the front end. That way, when you get to the point where you're able to go out and look for a job, you know what area to focus in, and you're not just playing paintball and splattering out everywhere. I think it pays off to know what you want to do by the time you get out of the course.
Yeah.
And volunteer jobs, it seems like a waste of time, but I'm telling you, I submitted a proposal. We're negotiating. It leads to other things. Pick a cause that you like and just do some work for them, and you'd be surprised at how it can grow your network and really help you out.
Yeah, I like the initiative. I think it's great. I think networking is good. Yeah, it can be a little bit rough to do the job search while you're in the program. I think that's why a lot of coding boot camps recommend it, because they probably had a lot of students that would do that and can't keep up with it. But if you can keep up with it, I think that's fantastic advice. I don't see why you have to wait for a coding boot camp to greenlight you. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Cool. Well, anyways, before I forget, let's go ahead and go around. I really appreciate you guys coming on. This is good conversation. And I definitely think we gave some people some room to expand on different points we talked about earlier. But yeah, so if we'll start with you, Max. If you want to share anything, if people want to reach out to you, anything like that, is there anything that you would like to share? You are muted.
Sorry about that. You can find me on LinkedIn. Do you mind if I send you my LinkedIn bio? So you can
is everyone okay with me sharing their LinkedIn in the description?
Yeah.
Okay, I usually do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, likewise, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you are looking to start App Academy and want some tips. I really feel like I have a good strategy for how to get through it. Or if you want some creative networking ideas, I've been very creative in my job search, and I'm happy to help point other people in the right direction. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Patrick?
Yeah. Just to kind of hopper on what I went on, Catchfire is a good resource for finding volunteer jobs. There are a lot of good companies out there. Definitely don't be afraid to, donate a little bit of your time. Your career coaches, at least mine so far, has really done a great job of giving me the extra time that I need to focus on the volunteering and all that. So it's definitely something worth doing. And yeah, the LinkedIn is, I guess, will be down in the description. And if you want to see something, the Resilience Project is the one that I'm working for. So their website will be completely new soon.
Okay, nice. You said it was Catchfire?
I think catchfire.com. Yeah, they post all the different volunteer job, like organizations that need help, and then what kind of job it is. You can search for it, and then they put you in contact. You send a message. Then if they like you, they'll get back with you, and then they'll set up an interview and go from there. And it's a pretty easy, streamlined process. And they actually keep track of what your impact has been so far, how many dollars you've saved the company that you've been working for. And it's a good way to have something meaningful to put on your resume.
That's interesting. Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing that. Never heard of it. Okay, that's it. If you are watching this on YouTube, definitely leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Are you considering App Academy? Are you not considering it after this? Feel free to share. If you have any other points to make, any disagreements, agreements about what we talked about, definitely share it in the comments. I read every single comment. So yeah, this is, I'm glad we got to do this one again. Max, Jason, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.